They claim that our eyes will just be created slightly different from what they are. We talk these things are not normal.
Welcome to Strange Familiars.
Oh, hi, Tim. I didn't know we were starting. I'm still eating my blood orange.
If you've seen something strange and you'd like to share your story on the podcast, whether it's a cryptid, a UFO, a ghost, anything paranormal, or if you know of a story you think we should cover, you can email us, strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com. How are you doing tonight, Allison?
I'm doing well. I haven't had a nap, but we'll see how this goes.
The evening nap is very important to the the Strange Familiars.
It's a crucial part of the evening.
So tonight we're going to be talking with Logan, who shares some audio that his father recorded in 1979 and 1980.
This is fascinating. I really enjoyed overhearing this interview. You know, I pre-hear things.
Yes.
I pre-hear the show, and this one was a...
Yeah, Allison hears the interviews usually twice. Usually once when I do the interview, and then again when I do the editing. It's really fascinating. This whole story. There's some, sort of tragic parts to it with his father and stuff, but it all kind of ties in this really, really interesting way. And I really like the way he tells the story in the way. It's almost as if he took on his father's research in a way.
Yeah, I mean, anytime we have a story that sort of involves like a family mystery or inherited mystery or genetic mystery, I really like those stories.
Yeah, so it's really, really cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to interview Logan, and I do play one of the clips that his father recorded during the interview. Mm-hmm. But there's a bunch of clips of these purported Bigfoot sounds, this Mount Vernon Monster, supposedly. Mm-hmm. And I'll come back at the end of the interview and I'll play them all. So I won't interrupt his interview. So you'll get to hear all the different clips at the end of the show. So hang on for those at the end. Now, since we're talking about the Mount Vernon Monster.
Is this Mount Vernon like Mount Vernon, the Mount Vernon?
Like where George Washington lives?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, like sometimes there's
sure
100 towns with certain names, but I didn't know this was the Mount Vernon.
You could probably hear a rabbit in the background.
She deliberately messes stuff up. Like
she wants to be on the podcast. That's going nutty in her pen. She's usually roaming free at this time.
Yeah,
but there's some wet paint that she can't be near. She's very irritated that she has to be in her pen at this time.
I get it. I'm irritated too.
This is from the Childress Index. That's the name of the newspaper.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
From Childress, Texas, the 20th of May, 1979. However, this article was in the AP. I think it originally was in a Washington paper, but this is just where I found it.
Okay.
So, Mount Vernon Monster causing big problems. Alexandria, Virginia. George Washington once slept here, but he might find it harder nowadays. A strange something is at large, wailing or screaming nightly, a mile from the ancestral home of the father of his country. For 9 noisy months, the mystery creature has haunted a patch of woods surrounded by $150,000 homes near Mount Vernon, wrecking the peace and defying spotting and identification. Local teenagers have caught its act on tape. It goes something like "Uakra" or "Ivakuguga" or even "Au au au." Now that's me trying to phonetically pronounce what they wrote in the paper.
Yeah, I feel like you're taking some liberties there.
The Mount Vernon Monster, some call it. Others Bigfoot. More guesses. Hoot owls, loud frogs, a radio with a stuck button, wild boars, a prankster with a bullhorn, the ghost of George Washington, the ghost of George Washington's pigs. One person suggested a peacock, said George Stickman, Fairfax County game warden, who has ruled out bears, bobcats, and other fauna found in the vicinity. The peacock theory may not be too exotic. Experts at the nearby Mason Neck Wildlife Refuge said peafowl are often kept as yard pets in the South. One could have flown the coop and fluttered to Mount Vernon. They have a loud, penetrating cry, almost like a scream, said John Aldrich, a retired fish and wildlife researcher. Mike Morgan of the National Zoo said the birds used to escape frequently when allowed to roam the grounds. Whatever it may be, the creature is elusive as well as vocal. It has foiled police watches, flyovers by a U.S. Park Police helicopter, volunteer youth patrols, and the determined efforts of Warden Stickman. The thing seems to know when you leave the woods. Then it starts to holler, said Stickman, who staged a fruitless overnight vigil to catch the interloper. Meanwhile, the residents continue to discuss the problem at get-togethers, playing tapes and advancing theories. Maybe it's a wounded animal or bird with damaged vocal cords, said Maggie Oyer, who thinks the sound it makes is a low wailing. One resident, Thelma Crisp, says she spotted the monster. She described it as a creature about 6 feet tall, which lumbered into the woods after being sighted. Could it be a Bigfoot trying to reach headquarters of the Fish and Wildlife Service in Washington, 15 miles away? So they always had to throw in a joke in those stories. Mm-hmm. They have since the 1800s or before. It is not a peacock, at least not what is on these tapes.
It doesn't sound like a peacock.
No.
I remember we used to go to that farm where they had music playing and they...
oh, yeah.
And they had peacocks there.
Yeah, I mean, peacocks can be scary. Like
it almost sounds like a child's scream. It's very disconcerting, but it's a different disconcerting than these tapes.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think the peacock theory sits. Maybe it's something else, but I don't think it's a peacock, as I said.
It's interesting that it was a woman. I mean, we don't know her name, but being Thelma in the 70s, I assume that she was neither 8 years old nor 25.
But possibly a member of Scooby-Doo.
But that she had admitted to seeing something akin to Bigfoot.
Well, you will hear Logan in the interview mention Thelma Crisp, and his father actually sat on her rooftop and recorded the sounds that we'll hear.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so she's actually figures into the interview.
Oh, okay.
So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk to Logan about the Mount Vernon Monster and about some strange lights he saw that sound a lot like what we see at Site 7. So it's very, very interesting that he has those encounters as well. Tonight we're talking with Logan, who's got several stories to share with us, as well as some really, really interesting audio that his father recorded in some decade before. Was that in the 70s or the 80s, Logan?
79, 80.
79 and 80, wow. So really, really interesting audio, but you have your own stories as well, and let's just jump into them. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Excited to talk to you.
Yeah, so I'll just start with my dad. I first became interested in Bigfoot because of him. When I was very young, I went to my family's river house in Virginia. I'm from Virginia, and we have like 4 rivers here. So it was just one of those rivers. I live in the central part of the state. And that was when he decided to tell me and my brother about this audio that he recorded when he was in during the summers of his college. And he didn't just tell my brother and I, but he told my mother and basically my whole mom's side of the family, just randomly. And that's when I first became interested in all this, and I've been interested in it pretty much ever since. What he showed us was and didn't show us anything. He let us listen to a recording that he took in 1979 and 1980, I guess. And I wish I had asked more questions. My father passed away, but I guess over the course of 2 summers during his college breaks. And this took place where he grew up, which is Mount Vernon, Virginia. And Mount Vernon is the former home of George Washington. Mm-hmm. And just the subdivision right outside of that, and the woods behind their houses. And there's Washington. I sent you a Washington Post article, and there's definitely multiple accounts from other people. I've spoken to one, and there's a forum, with people from that time period who heard this, and it was just these screams that came from this section of woods, and they're the strangest noises I've ever heard. What everybody was saying is they thought it was Bigfoot. the game warden even actually came out, couldn't figure out what it was. I remember my dad said they brought German Shepherds. If you've ever been around German Shepherds, you know that they're pretty much fearless. I mean, they're going to go in the woods after something if they're trained to do that. And whatever was making the noises in these woods had these dogs whimpering, and they would not go in. And there's actually in the audio that I sent you, there is just a split second, I think, where you can hear dogs crying, whimpering. And I just remember that he definitely mentioned that a lot, so that stood out to me when I heard it. Another thing that you see in the Washington Post article, and then also elsewhere, especially in the blog or the forum, is a name that keeps popping up. Her name's Thelma Crisp. She was a resident on the street, and I remember my dad mentioning that name, and he would say that I guess she was just a friendly neighbor, and she would let him get on top of her house at nighttime to stake this thing out. Because I guess all these houses were lined up right against the woods. And when he would do so, these woods were next to a golf course. And he would get up there on top of the house. Sometimes he would even bring his girlfriend, he said. And right before nighttime, or maybe even after nighttime fell, something would start throwing golf balls out of the woods towards the house, and he would find them the next day in the yard. And then when another time, and I guess I have to note that when my dad told me all this, I was pretty young. He died in 2012. I'm 27 now, and he didn't talk about it too much during my teenage years. So this was mainly something that he talked about when I was really young. But he told me once that there was a barn in the woods, and I guess an abandoned barn, and he staked out in there one day, and this was during the day, and something threw a giant log at the side of the barn. And he went outside, and it was just broken in half right there. And he didn't see anything that could have thrown it. And I kept asking him, I remember, because I was super interested, and I just asked him, did you ever see it? Did you ever see it? And he said once. One time he told me, I saw something really big in a trail in that woods, and it moved to the side of the trail, and it was dark. And that was the only thing I ever saw.
I mean, other than the howls and what people were saying, that's what led him to believe it was Bigfoot that he was dealing with and recording and so forth.
Yeah, I guess. I wish I had have asked him more detailed questions, but he definitely thought it was Bigfoot. I don't have the reason for what made him finally believe, make that determination. But I know it was something that he carried with for the rest of his life, maybe not tell everybody, but something that was in him. Like he was constantly thinking about it throughout the end. He was a lawyer, and I know he didn't tell anybody at his, in his work life, because he just wasn't that way. But I'll note this too. My dad ended his own life. And I think it's important that I note that, especially just because of something I was recently informed of. My mom went, he was seeing a psychiatrist, and he was depressed, obviously. And I really don't know the details about why, but no one does. What I'm trying to get at is, she went to his psychiatrist and just asked him, she was just looking for some clarity. And this was 7 years ago that he died, and she just went this year. And one thing he said was whatever experience your husband had with what he thought to be a Bigfoot, back then, had a profound effect on his life. And that was within the last month that I was told this.
Wow.
Or that she was told this. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm sorry for your loss. That said, it's not the only time I've heard that, or something similar, where some sort of encounter with these creatures has just profoundly affected people throughout their life. Now, in what way, I guess it doesn't affect everyone the same. But again, it's, I've heard this before with this profound effect that has. I mean,
yeah.
In one way, if you think about it, you're told your whole life that there's no such thing as monsters, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with the idea that there very much are, and they're real. It can be world-shaking, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something has something to do with it. I knew that the reason I'm even saying all of this is because I've just had that feeling. I've been listening to you for about 4 or 5 years now, and the more I've listened to it and the more I've just thought about it and things that have happened to me, there's something in common with everybody that experiences this stuff. And I'm not saying it's all dark like what happened to my father, but I think that, it definitely has something in common with some of the experiences people have had. Mm-hmm. And I'm not explaining it as best as I want to right now, but it's just something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and how I feel like a lot of people who experience this stuff there's something going on in their own individual lives that makes them see this stuff. But then there's also stories that completely contradict what I just said.
Right, sure, yeah. Well, that's always the case with this stuff. You can make these generalities, and then there's always exceptions. But no, I think you're right. It's often people are going through stuff in one way or another. That these things will happen. Like we say, these liminal times. Not liminal spaces as well. But also liminal times where you're in between things, or highly emotional times, highly times where things are changing a lot, and I mean, college in general is a big one. I think it's that in between, you haven't really entered your adult life yet, and then you're dealing with, you're becoming who you're going to be, I suppose, and then to add that in there, would be something pretty heavy, I would think.
Yeah.
Did you get the impression that your father was just a full-on believer from these experiences? That he definitely believed in these creatures?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Since he's died, and the more that I've looked into it myself, the more I believe that and this is hard for me to say because no one has a total grasp on what this is, obviously. So all I'm trying to say is I think he was more of at the time a flesh and blood type, full believer, like trying to figure out how a real physical ape was living in Northern Virginia, and that was just bewildering to him. I mean, he probably couldn't get over that fact that he actually thought that.
Right.
So, I think if he had have been given the information that I've just come on to in the past 5 years of just kind of opening up to something else, he might have dealt with it easier. And I could be completely wrong again. Like he might have been thinking that all along and just didn't want to admit it. I just have no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you wonder because and I've said this. I think starting thinking it's some sort of natural undiscovered creature or relic hominid or something natural out there is the logical place to start. And especially if you're looking into it in the time he was, pre-internet and so forth.
Yeah.
What are you going to do other than start there? I mean, I think that's absolutely the logical place to start, and I think it's where most people start. It's the sort of dissonance trying to make that work, especially on the East Coast, trying to make that work of a natural creature that, eventually led to me just going, I can't anymore. I can't think of it that way anymore. And I could be wrong. I'll still allow that, maybe some way it is. I don't know. But for me to make it work at all in my head, I just had to sort of leave that idea behind almost entirely. I'll leave a small possibility of there being some sort of natural creature out there, but very, very small at this point. It's on the East Coast anyway. Like I said, I just don't think breeding populations can exist.
I definitely just seem to agree. Just based on look at Northern Virginia. I mean, it's just out of anywhere. I wouldn't think there'd be a Bigfoot there.
Right.
But
right.
Even in 1979, I mean, it's not as blunt. It wasn't as blown up as it was now, but it was still very populous. I'm trying to think of any other details he mentioned. I did mention in the email that I remember him saying multiple times and just really making a point out of that he was certain there were more than one. And that he would point out to us, like where in the audio, where he thought that it was one calling back to another one. I got that impression just listening as well. And just for the listeners, I'll be playing a couple clips as we're talking about it here. But at the end of the interview with Logan, I'll just go ahead and play all the audio he sent me in different clips. But yeah, I myself have not been able to pinpoint that, but that's just me.
Yeah, well, it just listen to it. Just seemed like that seemed like maybe an answer there. Another really interesting thing that I noticed in a few of the clips is whatever howls or growls or roars, you can hear the whole woods quiet down afterwards. So you have this sort of base level noise of night insects and so forth, and then the howl or growl happens, and then it's almost like somebody takes a fader and pulls it down. The background noise just gets quiet, like everything just went whoa, and then it'll gradually build up again. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, I never noticed that, but I'm sure. I mean, that's just me not picking up on things. But when he died, I really started looking into this specific, series of events, and it all started on that blog or forum, and I just started contacting people. I found someone who had blogged about it, and then I also found one of the other people who were there during the time and also got their own recording, and he sent me his recording, and it's the same noise.
Oh, wow.
So that's something weird. Like, like I was saying earlier, it completely contradicts my whole thought process of this being an individual thing. And it comes back to this, several people heard this and they both got recordings of it. So I don't know. There's rumors of, there's lots of different rumors of teenagers going back in the woods and playing some kind of stereo, to other rumors that I just can't remember right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought it was interesting to hear a duplicate. I mean, it wasn't a duplicate, but it was the same noise,
Right.
just somebody else's recorder. The blogger that I talked with, he looked into it for a long time and never found out anything more than I'm talking about right now. And that's pretty much all I know about the Mount Vernon Monster.
Oh, but it's very, very interesting, though. And I just love found audio like that. Well, not found, but the on-site audio. Obviously, from my own explorations, people know that. But to be given this audio from, like you said, 1979 and 1980 is super, super exciting for me, super special. So I'll play the clips at the end of the interview, and I'll thank you for sharing that and for sharing your father's stories. Really, really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but you have your own stories as well.
I do. And it all started from me looking into the Mount Vernon Monster. I mean, that's just when the time started.
Interesting.
I was a sophomore in college when he died. I went to school in West Virginia, and I just started looking into it then, but not super hardcore like I did when I got back from college.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated from college. I came back here, and I moved into my parents' house with my mother, and it's out in the country. It's sort of like when you describe your Site 7, this reminds me of Site 8. It's a community. I mean, there's probably 30 10-acre lots in this community. So it's just fields and woods.
Mm-hmm.
But there's houses. But I've just seen so many weird things since I graduated from college. So it all started, we lived on a lake. And I still live here. I don't live at my parents' house. My friend bought a house in the same area. I'm literally less than a mile away. But I grew up on a lake, and one day I was out on the lake when we had a pontoon boat, and it wasn't like a ginormous lake. It was it was really a big pond.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends were out there, and we saw this ball of light just start coming over the lake. And it was making no sound. It was low enough to where you could see the reflection on the lake and right at the tree level and oak trees. And my friends are like, "Logan, what is that?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. What is that?" And they just keep kind of asking me, "Logan, what is that?" They're like, "What is that?" And I'm just as stumped as you are. And it just passes over the lake. And that was it. That started everything, though.
Before you move on, how big was it, roughly?
The size of a softball.
Oh, okay, so not super big. And did it have any color?
Like a bluish, I wouldn't say all the way blue, more like in the middle of LED and blue.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know exactly that kind of color is what you're speaking of. I describe it, that kind of blue-white LED color. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
so this moved across, over the surface of the lake.
Yes. So the lake is surrounded by an oak forest, and oaks. I mean, you're from Pennsylvania. They're probably the same height up there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was right above the tree line.
And how quickly did it move?
Honestly, if you had a drone, it would probably be about the same speed. I mean, it wasn't really fast, but it wasn't lagging along either. It was constantly going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
very, very interesting.
That's the first one. I mean, so ever since then, probably to 2 years ago. So I graduated from college 5 years ago. So the first 3 years, I started seeing that light, but in a ton of different, not like I had seen it with them. Like, one example is I was cutting the grass, got off the tractor, and it was in the field across the road. Like, it looked like someone was walking towards the edge of the field with a headlamp on. And I was like, who's over there in the field? It's kind of weird. And the more I watched it, the more I realized that's not a person. That's just a light.
Mm-hmm.
And it made these weird little wobbling movements that just didn't make any sense as to what it could be. I remember running inside and watching it from inside the house, like from a window. And I had told my neighbor that I had been seeing these weird lights. And my neighbor, I grew up with, hanging out with his son, and his son's gone now, working out of state. But I still know his dad, and I told him about it, and he said, next time you see one, call me. So I called him, and I'm sitting in my living room looking at this thing from my window, and I'm like, it's here. Like, just walk down the road because we're right next door. And he starts walking down the road, and this thing just disappears. Oh. Just light goes out. So I go up to meet him. I'm like, it's gone. It disappeared. And he's like, all right, well, let's just sit here for a little while and see if it comes back. And we did. And it did like this weird, like when he was looking one way, it did this weird flash, and he saw it out of the corner of his eye. I was like, did you see that? And he was like, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I didn't see it directly, though. And I was like, at this point, I'm just getting frustrated. Like, what in the heck? Mm-hmm. So we start walking back to his house, like in his dirt. And when we get to his driveway, and this is not a long distance, probably not even 100 meters. And we get into his driveway, and we look up into this field where I saw it. And now I said, look, it's up in the sky, like above the field now, like it's back at like the tree height that it was over the lake. And it's just hovering above this field. And I'm like, do you see that? Like, that's not a plane. I've never seen a drone that just hovers and this was like constantly rising in the atmosphere. I mean, it was just going up very slowly. He's like, I'm going to go get my binoculars. So he goes back inside, and this is probably the weirdest story I have for you. So when he goes back inside, this field is a very big field. It's like, I want to say 15 acres and probably 10 acres. I'm probably hyping that up, but it's a big field, and it's just filled with brush. It's not cut. It's just filled with thickets. Mm-hmm. And when he's physically inside of his house, I hear and see a truck turn on in the middle of the field. Like, and to this day, I can't remember if I heard the ignition turn or not. But all I know is I was all of a sudden looking at a black truck in the middle of the field. Whoa. And it had several antennas. It was just black. Black is dark, whatever they say. Like, it was the blackest truck I've ever seen. And it just booked it. I mean, absolutely hightailed it out of there. Like, it had just been seen doing something that shouldn't have been doing. And by the time it's gone, he comes back outside, and this thing in the air has gotten really high up in the air, and it's still going up. So I'm thinking, if this was a drone that these people were out here, playing with, it's still in the air.
Right.
And I told him about it, and he's like, there's a truck out here? And like, it just didn't make any sense, because there's this, just this field is so thick, it'd be hard to get a truck back there. I mean, if it wouldn't be hard, but it would definitely tear your truck up. Mm-hmm. So he has the binoculars, and he's looking at this thing. And at this point, we can't even tell where it is anymore. And like, it's like it's like it either blended in with the stars at this point or it just disappeared again. And as he's looking up into the sky with the binoculars, I see what looks to be a shooting star come directly down into the field that we were standing by.
Oh, wow.
And right before it like hit the ground, it looked as if it just dissolved, like as in it didn't look like it hit the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like 5 feet from the ground. It scared me so bad that I jerked him as he was looking with the binoculars, and I was like, "Did you see that?" Like, and he's like, "I didn't see it, but I believe you. I mean, the way you're acting tells me that you saw something."
Right.
So that's that.
Well, now, okay. What time of year? Just out of curiosity.
Probably fall. I think it was like October.
So leaves on the tree still or not?
Halfway.
Boy, I mean, when you tell me he's out there looking for it and he only saw it flash, I immediately thought of taking Soraya to Site 7. That's exactly, I take him up there and they would kind of flash on and I'm like, "Did you see it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I saw it, but I don't know what it was." I'm like, well, that's,
Yeah.
Very, very strange. The truck, is it like a pickup truck or 4-wheel drive, or could you make out any detail?
I mean, this looked like a Super Duty pickup truck.
Mm-hmm.
Like a big pickup truck.
Did you happen to go out during the day and look for tracks or a place where it had pulled out or anything?
Yes. And I saw what could have been tracks. There is a greenhouse back there that their people do own that land. So I can't rule out that there was a truck back there. I even went to the parking lot the next week to see if I could see a black truck like that, and I didn't. And it was just in the way that this thing tore out of there, I would have seen tracks that were way more in depth than the ones that I saw. The ones that I saw looked older than what I was expecting, but I could also be wrong about that. Right.
And you say it really kind of tore out of there.
Yeah, the way that it tore out of there is what surprised me the most. Like it was just out.
Yeah.
As soon as he closed the door to his front door.
Oh wow. Wow. Oh man, that's strange.
And I even brought all this up to the guy who blogged about the Mount Vernon Monster because I had just been in communication with him for a while, and I was telling him all this stuff that I had been seeing, and he told me, people have reported seeing, sort of like, I guess what he was saying was like a Men in Black encounter, where he was asking me, when the truck rounded the corner, did you go and see if you could still see it? Because that's one thing he said, like, people have seen is they would see like a strange vehicle, and like if it rounded a corner, it wouldn't be there if they like went over to check. But I didn't do that. But like the area that I was in, I would have been able to see, even if it rounded a corner, I would have been able to see the lights. So I just didn't. It's one of those things where it's like blurry. It's almost like it rounded the corner and I just stopped paying attention.
Right. Yeah, the timing is really odd. Really, really strange. Did you happen to ever see the light again with this same neighbor? Like, was he ever able to get a better look at it?
No. And we've never spoken about it ever since.
Interesting.
Yeah, and like we've spoken plenty of times since. Like, he's a very close guy to my family, and we've just never talked about that. Like, we just that night, like, he was like, "I'm going. All right, I'm going inside," and I was like, "All right, I'm going home." And it was just very casual.
Right.
But almost too casual.
Well, like, often, it's one of the things I say. You wonder if like it wasn't for him. Whatever was going on there, maybe wasn't necessarily for him.
Yeah.
Who knows? Before we get back to our interview with Logan, I want to thank Sloom.com once more. Sloom.com manufactures merino base layers. Their Raven series of base layers, super soft, super comfortable, super warm. Their socks, which I believe you've been wearing every day.
Yes.
Sloom socks. They make sweaters as well. They make those wonderful scarves they sent us. And what I forgot to mention last week,
What?
the beanie they sent me, which is awesome. It's warm. It's super comfortable. It's the most comfortable beanie I've ever had. And it fits over my long hair, which most beanies do not do. So I'm very happy.
It must be made for people with long hair.
I don't know if they make, it's from the Wizard series or not, but I absolutely love that beanie. It's by far my favorite beanie I've ever owned. Sloom.com also has a large assortment of wellness products. We talked about the incense they sent. They have got some CBD stuff as well. Check them out. Sloom.com. That's SLOOMB.com. If you enter the code Strange Familiars, all one word, you will get 10% off. And thanks, Sloom.com. If you would like to help us continue to make Strange Familiars, the best way to do so is to become a patron at Patreon, at patreon.com/strangefamiliars. For $3 a month, you can get extra shows. We'll be releasing our next patron show in early March. It's going to be a continuation of sorts of this show, in which we'll be reading some more articles about wild men and so forth from Virginia. And then we'll be doing an Ask Me Anything as part of that as well. We've got a lot of neat questions coming up. We do full extra episodes of Strange Familiars for our patrons every month. $3 a month gets you that, but there's other levels of support as well. If you want to get things like t-shirts or copies of my books, CDs, and more, go to patreon.com/strangefamiliars and check everything out there. While we're talking about our patrons, we want to thank them. Thank you so much, patrons. Your support makes Strange Familiars possible.
Absolutely.
If you want to help us and you don't like the idea of a monthly subscription like Patreon, you can go to strangefamiliars.com and look in the show notes under any episode. You will see a paypal.me link where you can make a one-time donation to help us out.
This also includes socks, because that was like a big hit. Socks and chocolate? Yeah.
Everyone can help us by sharing the show on social media, by liking and subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts.
Here we go.
Himalaya, Podbean, whatever podcatcher you use, like and subscribe, and leave us those nice 5-star reviews, because that helps get the show in front of new potential listeners. And now let's get back to our interview with Logan. So do all your stories center around the same area, the same locale, basically?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Every single one except for one. And that was when I was a very young boy. And that's just, something that I threw in here, just some strange encounters. And it wasn't like it was very far away. It was at my church, which is right down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to save that encounter for the end, because it's unrelated to these orb things.
Okay.
I'm going to try to get these orbs out of the way. That's what's been the majority of my encounter.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So one time when I had seen this thing, I had been seeing this thing for a long time now, and I had been seeing multiple at a time. Sometimes they would be up in the sky. Sometimes they would be down at human walking level.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm agreeing with you, and I don't know if what we're seeing is the same thing, but I'm imagining, as you're describing this, it's seems very much like what we're seeing at Site 7. So again, having not seen what you saw, I don't know if they're the same thing, but they certainly sound very similar. But anyway, continue. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So when I had been, listening to podcasts and, doing research, and I had gotten really into this stuff, sort of like everybody says, and I had gotten real deep, just in terms of being obsessed with learning about it. And I remember saying to myself, like, I think maybe there was like a week where I hadn't seen these things for a while. And it was like the first week, and I was like, maybe I'm not going to see these things anymore. And maybe I can just, maybe this is really all in my head, and maybe I can just, ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that to myself as I was like, I had just pulled into my driveway, and I was parked in my driveway, and my driveway overlooked this lake. And, I had looked across the lake before I started thinking this. Like, the fact that I hadn't seen anything right then and there made me kind of say this to myself. And as soon as I said that, I looked back up, and there's an orange one, like right smack dab in the lake, like right in the middle of the lake, right in front of me. When I say right in front of me, still probably 100 meters away, but just dead center. I didn't have to look to my left or right. And this one gave me just this bad feeling. Like, it just gave me the feeling of like, yeah, we can hear what you're thinking. Mm. Like, sort of. Like, that's what it gave. That's just the feeling it gave me. I didn't hear that in my head. Didn't get any message other than just this reaction in my body just telling me that this was creepy. Mm-hmm. And at that same time, this is weird too, and this has only happened once. As this orange orb appeared over in the woods, like across my lake, I saw what looked like something the color of fire. Like, it had the color of fire, and it literally looked like a man walking through the woods, like running through the woods. Like if you were to take pictures, like he was moving like on still shots. Like, that's how it looked like he was moving. And it looked like he was made out of fire.
Wow.
And I have no idea, I've never heard of anything like that. Never. And maybe I was looking at something that I just couldn't make out. It is looking across a lake, but there's nothing across this lake. And it just, the way this thing was moving in the woods right on the banks, just was odd. And obviously the fact that it was the color of fire.
Did it have a glow to it like fire?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, never seen that before or after. So I actually wrote about this on Reddit when I first started seeing this stuff. And on Reddit, I disclosed my county because I really wanted to know if someone in the area had been seeing the stuff. I live in Central Virginia, and I don't know. I hadn't heard of many, stories from this area. So I just decided to disclose my county and see if anybody said anything. And on the same day, a woman responded saying she was in the same county and had seen the same things, and that she had a really cool video for me to see. And this isn't like me. I don't really just, get online and say, let's hang out. But I said, come on over. I want to meet you. And so she did. And she showed me this video of what looked like an orb, I guess. Except in this video, it was like changing shapes and doing all this crazy. It looked like a disco ball, to be honest. But even crazier than a disco ball. But what I'm trying to get at is, while she was over, because her purpose of coming over was to see what I was talking about. So I said, all right, we're going to go out on this boat. And as soon as it gets dark, we're going to start seeing all these lights. And we did. the weirdest thing is, while she was there, I've never seen as many lights as I had. Her being there, and I come to think of this afterwards, but I really do think her being there and me, both her and I, having seen these things before, I guess made it more prevalent. I mean, I really...
I know, as crazy as it sounds, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's what happened when Chad and I went to Site 7. It was unbelievable. The difference that when Soraya and I were there, for instance. I don't know why. I have no clue why. But it seemed like with Chad and I there, it just got more intense and weirder.
Yeah. That's definitely how it felt. And that's the only time that's ever happened to me, because I've never met anybody else who has seen these things. Mm-hmm. And, but before she left, like, we were on the road, we just decided to walk down my road because it's a pretty rural road and we might see something. And we thought what we saw was the road lighting up, and there was no car coming. Mm-hmm. But like right around the bend, it looked like something was coming. And that's when she was like, I'm out of here. Like, this is freaky. And it was.
The place where she took her video that she showed you was a different area of the county, though, than this lake?
Yes.
Yeah, she had seen something similar, but somewhere else. Okay.
Yeah, definitely the other end of the county, and it wasn't as rural. Mm-hmm. It was more subdivision. Huh. Yep. Another really strange thing I've seen outside of the orbs, but somehow I think is related. One morning I woke up. I've been a reporter for like the past 4 years, and I wake up early. Some mornings really early just to get work done in the morning. And I woke up at like 5 o'clock, and I walked outside my back door, and this back porch looks at the lake, and I just decided to look at the lake. I mean, it's not really uncommon of me. And I look across the lake, and in these woods, just this light. Like, I mean, it looks almost as if someone dragged a spotlight out into the woods, flipped it upwards, turned it on. And I was just looking at it like, this is right in front of me. And I better look at it until it goes away, because this is not normal. And it, within like 10 seconds, it just turned off. That was it. No noise, just this ginormous LED looking spotlight just protruding out of the woods. That was I've never felt more like amazed than that one. Like I was just like, what? There's no, like, I had no answer for it. I mean, it was just so big, and it was right there in front of my face. And I just couldn't, I knew that I was the only one awake looking at this thing. And it just turned off like it was nothing. Wow.
Yeah. Very, very strange stuff, but it's not dissimilar to stuff I've seen, honestly. I haven't seen that specifically, but I don't know if you heard the last Site 7 show we did. It looked like people almost juggling flashlights in the woods with just the beams like flipping around like that. It was very, very strange stuff.
Yeah, that's just really strange. I sent you a video of the quartz mine. That's in these same woods that I'm talking about right now. So there's about 2 miles back, there's just this random hole, and there's just piles of quartz everywhere. And I mean, this looks like it was dug in the 1800s. That's how old. Mm-hmm. And I got nothing for it. I mean, I've heard that, there's theories out there that maybe the minerals could have something to do with it. So I'm just pointing that out. But there is just this random quartz mine around here.
Yeah, no, I find that very interesting, just because the area of Site 7, there's tons of quartz in the ground.
So during this time period, I've never seen Bigfoot. But all right, so I'm gonna rewind us a little bit back to probably a year after my father died. So I was probably a junior in college, and my friend came home with me, and this is before I had ever seen these orbs. And we just were hanging out at my house one day, and then there was just cool stuff over across this lake. I mean, it was just a giant, plot of woods. So we were just going. I mean, this is something we enjoy to do, is walk through the woods. And I took him over there. Well, also because there's this strange field over there, and I told him I was going to show him this field because there's literally a door in the middle of this field. Just a door. You can open it, you can walk through it, you can close it.
Wow.
It's very strange. And that was the reason for me taking him over there. And we saw that, and we just kept walking, and we came up to an abandoned shed. And like I said, I've never seen Bigfoot, and I didn't even think of, possibly being Bigfoot until further listening and research. But when we were coming up on this shed, we both I started hearing this growl, and we both it was just not a normal growl. We just both started looking at each other and like confusion, and like we were like, what is that? And not really knowing what to say because we just were so confused. I mean, I'm going to say like everybody else says. I mean, it literally, I could feel it in my body, and it appeared to be coming out of this shed. Though that was just our best guess. It just had us so frightened and confused with him, and it was all a split-second moment. I mean, within seconds, we were just walking back, and we were out of there. I mean, just walking the other way. Mm-hmm. And we never really talked about it. And that's another thing that gets me. Like, we talked about it like 2 years later. Like, I was like, remember that time we got growled at? And like, my friend to this day still is like, yeah, we got growled at by a tiger.
A tiger.
Like, he's joking, but right. That's what it sounded like. So that was the only kind of Bigfoot possible experience I've had. I really don't know what to make of it, but it was definitely strange. And I've grown up in this area, never heard anything like that before. I hunt, never heard anything like that. Another possible Bigfoot type experience was in the middle of me seeing all of these orb things. And so this is probably 2 to 3 years after I graduated. And I had even gotten to the point where I was telling my mom, like, you got to see these things. I mean, they're all over the backyard, basically. And that's another thing that really got to me just in my head. Like, she didn't seem to see these things. And, I mean, she saw them, but she was like, I was like, Mom, do you see it moving? And it's like she was in a daze. Like, I mean, she was looking at it. She was noticing what I was seeing, but it wasn't clicking the way it was clicking with me, if that makes any sense.
It does. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but I've heard it before. Let me say that.
Anyways, this is during like a time period where I was telling her about it, and for some reason she was on the porch. I mean, I wasn't like in this split second telling her about it, but she was on the back porch and I was down on our dock, and I just all of a sudden heard like what everybody says is the chimp monkey sounds chatter across the lake. It sounded like there were two armies of monkeys like just screaming at each other from each side of these woods. And I was like, I mean, I let the noise go on, and it ended after about 10 seconds. And I was just like sitting on the dock, like, what in the heck was that? And my mom, I yelled up. I was like, Mom? She was like, what was that? And I was like, I have no idea. And she heard that. And we had definitely never heard that one before. But that's all. I've never heard it again either. So I just wanted to note that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think I've pretty much gone through all of the orb stories.
Have you ever seen them change color?
I have. When I'm thinking about it, I don't think I've seen them change color like all in one, if that makes sense. I've seen them disappear one color and reappear a different color.
Reappear another color? Okay, yeah. Yeah, the ones I've seen, when they change, except when that JR was hitting him with the laser, they would change pretty immediately when he hit him with the laser, and I don't know whether to advise you to do that or not. Honestly, I don't know if that's a good idea, what we were doing. But
yeah.
But they would change immediately to red when he'd hit him with the laser. But otherwise, when I've seen him change, it's been very gradual. Not like Christmas lights. They didn't blink, one color and then blink another color. They would just kind of almost morph into a different color. But I'm very, very interested in this. So do you see them all times of the year?
I did. I will also say that I haven't seen them in like a year.
You haven't? Oh, see, that's interesting too. That's interesting. Well, we had what we felt was a dead period with Site 7, and then seems like they're back with a vengeance now. So I don't know if that's a thing or not. And I know, honestly, the same time that we had our dead period, the fellow that was on from Texas who had seen lights down there similar, he said he wasn't getting anything during the down period too down there, and then all of a sudden he said he started getting activity again as well.
That's so strange.
Yeah. If you start seeing these again, would you be open to a visit from Chad and I?
Definitely. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be living in this exact area, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, just keep us posted, and if you happen to start seeing him again, maybe we can run down there sometime, because I know we're very, very interested in this now, especially now that Chad's seen them. I think he's super interested.
And there's just there's just the whole, the reason I started out with saying the whole thing about individuals and how this, but because I grew up here, I don't remember seeing these things growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And it all happened after my dad died, and I just don't understand it in that sense, because the way I was seeing these things, once I started seeing them, it was so every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so just obvious. I didn't understand. There was a point where I just didn't understand how no one else was seeing them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
that's just one thing that confuses me.
That's what when we've gone to this area, and like I said, it's there are houses around the Site 7, and we've said that several times. Do these people not ever look out the window? Do they just never know? And it could honestly be that. It could just be they've never spent the time to look at it. I don't know, but it's at times, at least when I was there with Chad recently, and when I was there the first time I saw him with JR, they were so obvious. It's what is going on with these things? And why aren't people, more people noticing them? Yeah,
that's definitely a thought that I got.
Mm-hmm.
So I got two other little just stories that I'd like to tell you, if it's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, actually, three, if you want, because the whole reason I even emailed you in the beginning was because I was living with this guy who just kind of I'm living in my friend's house, but random, he had random people renting it out at times, and this guy was living here, and he was younger than me, so probably 24. I'm 27, and he was telling me about how he has been in. I wasn't very fond of this guy. I'll just say that. But I was listening to him when he was telling me this, and he said that he has been followed by this entity for a long time, ever since he was a kid. And one story that he told me was when he was very young, he was in his tree house at his grandfather's house, and he had seen this thing before, but this particular story, he was in his tree house, and it's like one of those tree houses that have a little trap door in the middle so you can see down. And he was laying down in it, and he could see this old man walking around his treehouse like that. He sort of just came out of the woods, and he was just walking around his treehouse, and he started calling his dad or his grandfather, saying, "There's a creepy guy out here." And grandfather came out. There was nobody there. And I said, "Do you remember what this guy was wearing by chance?" And he said, "Green flannel." And he said he's seen him multiple times since. I didn't know how to handle this guy. He just wasn't my type of person.
Yeah.
But I do believe, what he was saying. There was a lot of truth to what he was saying, and he was actually scared. So I really don't know. And when he said flannel, I was just tripping out because of all the shows I've listened to from you.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And he said he saw this guy multiple times in his life?
Yes. And right now I live in a house that was built in 1850. It's like the original farmhouse of the community, because the community that I grew up in used to be a farm, and this was like the original farmhouse. Mm-hmm. And he said that he saw entities here when he was living here. And what he described to me was like original family owners. This is Virginia. There was slavery, and he said he saw a slave. And I have never seen anything like that here. But, maybe I don't have, maybe certain people see certain things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe the orbs are for you and the other things are for him.
Yeah. So that's that story. So when I was I'm going to start from when I was super young. I'm probably under 10, and I was very scared of the dark, just terrified of the dark. I mean, I remember, just crying in my room, like thinking something was there. And one night I was just doing this. I was crying, and I didn't want to go wake up my parents, so I was just crying. And I remember opening my eyes, and I swear I grew up going to a Baptist church, but I'm really not the most religious person you've ever met. So when I say this, I don't know how to describe it, but it appeared to be an angel. I didn't see wings or anything, but it gave me the sense that this was an angel. It was a woman. She was glowing white. And I remember that very distinctly. It was glowing white. And she was standing right next to my bed, like right next to my right face. And I instantly felt so secure and went right to sleep.
Interesting.
I remember to this day, going from just from pure fear of nothing really to just complete security.
Mm-hmm. About how old were you?
Very young, probably 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. 5, anywhere from 5 to 7.
Did it kind of help calm your fear of the dark going forward, or just that time?
It's a good question. I really don't know. I have a feeling that I was still scared of the dark after that, but that's a really good question.
That's really interesting, though, that it's so vivid in your memory.
And it to this day it is just the feeling that I got of being so scared and going to just complete not scared anymore, and being able to go to sleep that. That's what it felt like I was safe to go to sleep.
Right. Yeah. Hey, I like when we get some of these positive ones here and there. Get enough of the scary ones. I like hearing that people have some nice and positive ones.
I know, because I looked up Lady in White, and that really isn't what I experienced, even though this definitely was a lady, and she was surrounded by a white light. Mm-hmm. The next one, all right, so this one took place in my church. And this church is probably 10 minutes away from my house. And it's a big church, just a big church for the area. And I would go to Sunday. I was still young, probably around the same age, honestly. But a little bit older, I think. And my brother had this friend that passed away very young. We were all very good friends. We would go over to his house and play in his tree house, and he had a younger brother that was closer to my age who's still around. But my brother's friend passed away to some rare disease. I don't even know the name of it, but he was probably in 3rd grade. So they all went to our church too. And there's like a courtyard at my church that was created for this boy. And they created a little stone and they put his ashes in there. And this church had 2 stories to it. And during Sunday school one day, I remember going to the bathroom, and it was almost like a school. It was so big. Like, if you go to the bathroom, you have to leave the classroom and go down the hall. So I was in the bathroom, and this stall had a window to it, and the window overlooked this courtyard. And I was going to the bathroom, and I don't know why. I remember looking out the window and thinking and feeling sad, because I knew what I was looking at. I knew that was my brother's friend's courtyard. So basically, I just decided to look through the crack of the stall door. And this church is, like I said, a very big church. And it was so big that, there was so many people in it that if you were to open this door to the bathroom, you hear what's going on outside. It was basically very impossible to not open that door without at least hearing it open. I mean, I guess it's possible, but I looked through the crack of the stall door, and there's this boy standing right in the crack of the stall door on the other side, staring right back at me. And it looks exactly like my brother's friend.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't think that at the time. I just thought, oh gosh, someone's waiting to go. So I, got my things together and opened the door to let this kid in, and there was nobody there.
Wow.
And I remember that one to this day. It's one of those things that just never leaves me.
Yeah. That's one of the ones that gives you a chill just to hear it.
Yeah.
So you didn't hear anybody leave the bathroom then either?
No, never heard anyone enter or leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been saying that since I was 10. But yeah, man, that's all the stories I have.
Well, Logan, thanks so much for sharing your stories and for sharing your father's story in his audio as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear anything that you picked up on that.
Yeah, awesome. I cleaned them up a little bit, but there's only so much you can do with the recordings that are that old. But it's definitely interesting stuff on there for sure.
Yeah, and I'm definitely interested in hearing if anybody else comes forward, because this Mount Vernon Monster thing, there's a lot of people that were interested in it. So I'm looking to see if maybe someone else has anything else to say about it.
Absolutely. Well, I'll keep you posted if so, and let us know if you see those orbs again.
Will do.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget, our next Patron episode will be a continuation of sorts of this episode, where we will dive into some wild man reports that I have gathered from Virginia, some old newspaper articles and stuff. We'll be reading those and then doing an Ask Me Anything as well. Lots of neat questions came in for us that we will be answering there as well. Patreon.com/strangefamiliars to sign up and get those bonus episodes. And now it's time for Photo of the Week.
I feel like there should be a theme music involved. In my mind, I'm inserting the sound of the guy going up the mountain on The Price is Right.
Oh, okay. Yes. There was a theme with him, yes.
Yeah, it was sort of like a vague Alps kind of scaling song mixed with some yodeling.
There was yodeling.
There was yodeling involved.
So this week's photo is a stereo view.
So it's like 2 photos in one.
Now, for those who don't know what stereo views are, can you explain it?
It's the most fun you can have in about 1900. Oh, it's basically like, I don't know if you remember the big 3D craze of the 80s where you would get red and blue sunglasses.
Sure, that they would play 3D movies.
Yeah.
Every now and then on TV, you had to adjust your TV a certain way in order to see it in 3D.
I believe we might still, at my parents' house, have some of those glasses because they were always kept in the same container in case a new movie came up.
And then in the 80s maybe, or maybe very early 90s, they were releasing 3D comic books as well, where you could wear the 3D glasses and read the comic books in 3D.
Wow.
Which always seemed like a recipe for a headache.
Yeah.
Like those magic eye things.
Oh, yeah.
Always gave me a headache. And I could never make them work. I know you could. You made them work. I just could not make them work. They just looked like chaos to me. And they give me a headache trying. But anyway, stereo view.
Well, so basically it's a double image that when you look through it, through a stereo viewer, which you probably don't have on hand, nor do I even have on hand, it becomes a three-dimensional image.
Now, they took these with special cameras, ideally, with two lenses that were like 3 inches apart, like eyeballs, right?
Some of them, yeah. By this time, by the era that we're talking about here, I believe so.
It's very interesting because you were talking with someone about stereo views this weekend. We were in an antique store and someone struck up a conversation about you. And I heard you talking with him about daguerreotype stereo views. So they realized this early on that they could make this 3D effect.
Yeah, I think because so much of it is part of like the early like camera obscura, like they're really building on their knowledge of photography from some of those really early processes.
It was really, really interesting. Really, really interesting. So stereo views are cards with photos printed on them, but they're two photos side by side. This one is pretty neat, and it's on theme for Strange Familiars.
It is. Telling Fortunes by Tea Leaves. So it's some ladies getting together to
tell their fortunes.
Yeah.
Would you say, by their dress, estimating this is 1800s?
Yes, I would say late 1800s. There's a bit of a puffed sleeve here.
Oh, yes. I hear they're all the rage
Yes.
back then. And now, too.
Yes.
Yes. Puff sleeves are a thing again. Not for wizards.
No, not for wizards. Only for Goop employees and children. So,
neat little photo of a gathering of tea leaf drinkers. Stereo view. It's the first stereo view I think we've offered. But yeah, like you said, it's two for the price of one. In a way. But no, I've recently come to really like stereo views. For a while, they were kind of like the redheaded stepchild of old photographs. Like I didn't want to deal with stereo views. But here lately, I've really come to love them. I'm really into stereo views now. So I've been collecting on theme, not just any stereo view. There's a million of them.
Yeah, you don't need like a random mountain in the Midwest, which is a really popular theme.
Yeah, there's a lot of landscapes. I'm into figural ones. I want the people. People have to be interesting in them. And this one is certainly interesting. It's a group of ladies telling fortunes. So we'll put this up in the show notes and in our Etsy store, and we'll say $15 and
that
postage.
Seems fair.
$15 plus postage for the Telling Fortunes by Tea Leaves stereo view. Go ahead and check it out at strangefamiliars.com. And again, there's a link to our Etsy store there. Shop name Lost Grave. But you can click on the image. I think it takes you right to the Etsy shop if you want to purchase it. And if you look in the photo of the week section there in our Etsy store, you can see some of the photos from previous weeks are still left. You can grab them at will. So check it out. Photo of the week, the Telling Fortunes by Tea Leaves. We'll be back soon with more Strange Familiars and our first patron show in March, which will be the continuation of sorts of this episode with the Wild Man articles from Virginia. Hang on. At the end of this episode, I will be playing all of the audio that Logan's father recorded in 1979 and 1980. At least all the audio Logan was able to send to me. And I'm just going to play that out at the end of the episode without any commentary. So if you want to listen through to all that, and we're just going to go ahead and play this out to the end of the episode. We won't end with a song this episode like we normally do. We'll just end with these recordings of the Mount Vernon Monster. Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts, music, books, art, podcasts, and more. darkhollerarts.com. Intro and background music is by Stonebreath. Go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com for more. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/strangefamiliars, where you can also join the Strange Familiars Gathering group, and we are on Instagram @strangefamiliars.